Why I had to rethink my plate. After 65 turning 65 was a wake-up call I didn't expect. I had always thought of myself as someone who ate pretty well. I wasn't stuffing myself with junk food. I cooked at home, and I avoided sugary sodas. But even with what I considered a fairly balanced diet, something still wasn't right. I felt slower. My joints ached more than usual. My digestion wasn't as smooth, and I started feeling bloated after meals that never bothered me before. At first, I chalked it up to just getting older, but the more I listened to my body, the clearer it became. My old eating habits weren't doing me any favors anymore. Aging changes a lot, but I never realized just how deeply it affects our relationship with food. Realizing that aging changes everything. One day, I went for a walk around the neighborhood and I had to stop halfway through. My knees were screaming, my energy was gone, and I had a strange tightness in my stomach. That evening, I looked at what I had eaten earlier: a ham sandwich on white bread, a side of pickles, and a diet soda. Nothing unusual. But for some reason, I felt completely drained. Later that week, I read an article about how certain foods become harder for our bodies to process as we age. It talked about inflammation, sodium, processed ingredients, and even the effects of artificial sweeteners. I saw nearly every meal of mine reflected in those warnings. That was the beginning of my food awareness journey. Not out of vanity, not for a beach body, but for mobility, clarity, and peace of mind. It wasn't about eating less, it was about eating smarter. I had a conversation with my doctor, and she confirmed what I suspected. After 65, our metabolism slows, our digestive system becomes more sensitive, and our nutritional needs change drastically. That white bread I love so much, my body could no longer handle the sugar spikes. The canned soups I leaned on for convenience, packed with sodium, which was messing with my blood pressure. Even certain fruits, which I thought were always healthy, were causing digestive issues because of their high acidity or fiber content. This wasn't about eating like a rabbit or surviving on boiled vegetables. It was about being smarter with what I put on my plate. I didn't want to live the rest of my life in discomfort or on a cocktail of medications. If there was something I could do to ease the burden on my body, I was willing to try. The emotional part of letting go, I'll admit, this part was harder than I expected. Some foods had been a part of my life for decades. A buttery croissant in the morning reminded me of my trips to France. A slice of bacon brought back Sunday mornings with the kids. Food isn't just food, it's memories, it's comfort. So when I had to start saying goodbye to some of these, I had to face the emotional side of it too. But here's the truth I learned. Memories don't live in food. They live in us. And I wasn't erasing the past by making better choices. I was giving myself the chance to create more memories, ones I could actually enjoy without the bloating, fatigue, or pain. Listening to my body for the first time. Before this change, I used to eat on autopilot. I never really paid attention to how certain foods made me feel. Now I've started noticing the signals. If I feel sluggish after a meal, I look back and think about what might have triggered it. If my joints flare up the next morning, I reflect on what I ate the night before. Our bodies talk to us all the time. We just have to be willing to listen. What surprised me the most was how fast some of the improvements came. Within a couple of weeks of removing a few problem foods, my energy began to return. My digestion was smoother, my skin looked healthier, and my sleep improved. All from simply paying attention to my plate. Shifting the focus. From what I can't have to what I deserve. At first, it felt restrictive, like I was being told what I couldn't have anymore. But over time, my mindset shifted. I started seeing it not as a punishment, but as a gift. I deserve to feel good. I deserve to wake up with energy. I deserve to live without chronic inflammation weighing me down. Food isn't just fuel. It's medicine. Every bite is a choice. And now, I choose nourishment over nostalgia. It doesn't mean I never indulge or treat myself, but those moments are more thoughtful, more balanced, and they don't derail my health anymore. Setting the stage for the next chapter. The changes I've made aren't just about extending my life. They're about improving the quality of the years ahead. I want to travel without worrying about my digestion. I want to walk without constant knee pain. I want to be fully present for my grandchildren, not half distracted by discomfort or fatigue. This wasn't a diet. It was a decision to honor the one body I've been given, a decision to support it, respect it, and fuel it with love. If you're over 65 and reading this, I want you to know, you're not alone in this journey. It's okay to let go of old habits, it's okay to ask questions, and it's more than okay to put your health first. The hidden enemies in my pantry. Once. I realized that my body was struggling more than ever after meals. I knew I needed to take a closer look at what I was actually eating. Not just the obvious stuff like sweets or fried foods, but the things I'd long believed were harmless or even healthy. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I pulled everything out of my pantry, one item at a time, and read the labels. What I found shocked me. Over the years, little by little, my pantry had become a museum of ultra-processed foods, convenience, items, and light or low-fat products that were anything but good for me. The packaging promised health, but the ingredients told a different story. I realized I'd unknowingly filled my shelves with foods that were quietly undermining my health. The sneaky sodium traplets start with salt. I've always loved a bit of flavor in my meals. Who doesn't? But when I checked the labels on canned soups, broths, pickles, sauces, and even my favorite crackers, I was blown away by the sodium levels. Some of those canned soups had over 1,000 millimolars of sodium in one serving, and that's only half a can. No wonder my blood pressure had been creeping up, even though I hadn't added much table salt myself. The hidden sodium in processed foods was doing the damage. After 65, our kidneys don't process sodium as efficiently, and high sodium levels can lead to increased blood pressure, water retention, and a higher risk of heart issues. Once I connected the dots, I knew something had to change. Processed meats. Tasty but toxic next on the chopping block were processed meats, bacon, ham, sausages, deli turkey. These had been lunch staples for decades, easy to throw on a sandwich, quick to cook, and delicious, yes, but deeply harmful. These meats are loaded with nitrates, sodium, preservatives, and saturated fats. I started paying attention to how I felt after eating them, bloated, sluggish, and sometimes with stomach discomfort. My joints also flared up more often after processed, meat-heavy meals. I didn't realize it at the time, but processed meats are also linked to an increased risk of colorectal cancer and heart disease, especially in older adults. When I learned that, it was easier to start saying goodbye. Healthy. Cereals that aren't so healthy. For years, I believed that starting my day with a bowl of cereal was a good choice. The box said heart-healthy, whole grain, or high in fiber, but the fine print told a different story. Many of them had 8 to 12 grams of sugar per serving, and I was usually eating double that without realizing. Sugar isn't just about sweet cravings. It affects mood, energy, inflammation, and even memory. As we age, our insulin sensitivity decreases, making us more prone to blood sugar spikes. That morning cereal was spiking my glucose and leading to mid-morning crashes I thought were just part of aging. Now I know better. Artificial sweeteners. A dangerous substitute. For the longest time, I thought I was being smart by drinking diet soda. 0 sugar, 0 calories, right? But then I started hearing more and more about artificial sweeteners, especially aspartame and sucralose, and their effects on older adults. Turns out they can disrupt gut bacteria, increase sugar cravings, and even affect brain health. And I noticed something else. When I drank diet soda, I actually wanted to eat more. That fake sweetness was messing with my hunger signals. Now, I avoid anything with artificial sweeteners. Those little packets at the coffee shop, sugar-free cookies, light yogurts, all gone. The myth of low fat. Everything in the 90s, we were all told to go low fat. And like many, I bought into it. I stocked my kitchen with low-fat cheese, margarine, skim milk, and light salad dressings. But I never questioned what they were putting in those foods to make up for the missing fat. Answer: sugar, thickeners, and chemical stabilizers. And worst of all, they left me feeling unsatisfied. I would eat a low-fat snack and then want another an hour later. It didn't nourish me. It just tricked me. As I've aged, I've learned that healthy fats, like those from olive oil, nuts, and avocados, are not the enemy. They actually help reduce inflammation, protect the brain, and keep me fuller longer. I wish I'd made this switch sooner. White bread, white rice, and other refined carbs, one of the hardest habits to break, was my love for white bread and rice. Toast in the morning, a sandwich at lunch, and rice with dinner. Comforting, familiar, and problematic. Refined carbs break down quickly into sugar in the body, causing blood sugar spikes and crashes. After 65, those fluctuations can be especially tough on energy levels and metabolism. I noticed I was hungrier faster, craving sweets more often, and feeling sluggish after meals heavy on these carbs. Switching to whole grains was an adjustment, but my body thanked me for it. I feel more stable throughout the day, fewer crashes, fewer cravings, and more energy. My pantry post-cleanup. After that day of going through my pantry with a critical eye, I made some big changes. I got rid of canned soups and instant noodles, processed meats, sugary cereals, and granola bars, white bread, and white pasta diet sodas, and sugar-free snacks, low-fat dairy with additives, and I replaced them with low-sodium broth and home-cooked soups lean, fresh meats or plant-based proteins, oats, plain yogurt and natural nut butter whole grain breads, quinoa, brown rice, herbal teas, and infused water-full fat, Greek yogurt, and real cheese, in moderation. The difference has been night and day. A new level of awareness cleaning out my pantry didn't just change what I ate. It changed how I thought about food. It made me a more conscious shopper, a more curious cook, and a more respectful eater. I realized how much of my food had been chosen out of habit or convenience, not because it served my body. Now, every item I bring into my kitchen has to earn its place. I ask myself, will this support my health or sabotage it? And honestly, that one question helps me avoid 90% of the trouble foods. How these foods were affecting my body, and I didn't even know. When I first turned 65, I thought the aches and changes I was feeling were just part of growing older. I blamed my foggy memory on senior moments, my bloated stomach on just eating too fast, and my sore joints on the weather. What I didn't realize at the time was that many of these discomforts weren't just signs of aging. They were signals from my body that certain foods were no longer working for me. And the surprising part? These were foods I had eaten for years, maybe even decades, without a second thought. Looking back, I see now that my body had been quietly raising red flags. I just wasn't paying attention. Once I started cutting out the worst offenders from my pantry, the changes in my body were so noticeable, it was almost like waking up from a fog. The normal that wasn't normal. For a long time, I thought, it was normal to feel heavy and tired after meals. I would eat what seemed like a standard lunch, a sandwich with deli meat, some chips, and a soda, and then spend the rest of the afternoon feeling sluggish, even a little irritable. I chalked it up to getting older. But it wasn't just age, it was inflammation, it was blood sugar spikes, it was hidden ingredients silently stealing my energy. Even simple things like headaches, stiff knees, or an upset stomach after dinner weren't just bad luck or random. They were directly tied to what I had just eaten. I didn't see the connection until I removed those foods, and the symptoms started disappearing. Joint pain that eased. When I changed my plate, one of the most surprising improvements came in my joints. For years, my knees would ache when I climbed stairs. My fingers were stiff in the mornings. I figured arthritis was just settling in and that I'd have to learn to live with it. But when I gave up processed meats, excessive sugar, and refined carbs, something remarkable happened. Within 3 weeks, the swelling started going down. My hands weren't as stiff. My knees stopped aching after a walk. I couldn't believe it. Changing my food actually changed my pain. I later learned that certain foods cause chronic low-grade inflammation, especially processed meats, sugary snacks, and refined grains. I had been feeding the fire without even knowing it. Brain fog and forgetfulness. Another major issue I was experiencing was mental fog. I'd walk into a room and forget why I went there. I'd start a sentence and forget where I was going with it. I wasn't worried at first. Who hasn't had moments like that? But it was happening more often than I was comfortable admitting. When I stopped consuming artificial sweeteners, especially from diet sodas and sugar-free products, I noticed a real difference. My mind felt clearer. My focus sharpened. I wasn't stumbling over thoughts the way I used to. Studies show that chemicals like aspartame may have an impact on cognitive function, especially in older adults. I had spent years choosing diet foods in hopes of staying healthy, but it turns out they were clouding my brain. Letting go of them helped me feel more alert, more aware, and even more engaged in conversations. Digestive discomfort and bloating, one of the things I hardly ever talked about, even with close friends, was how uncomfortable my stomach felt after certain meals. I would experience bloating, gas, and sometimes even cramps, especially after eating processed carbs or foods high in preservatives. I always assumed my digestion had just slowed down with age, and that was partially true. But what I hadn't realized was how much my food choices were making things worse. When I eliminated highly processed snacks, fried foods, and greasy fast food, the change in my digestion was incredible. I felt lighter, more comfortable, and no longer dreaded how I'd feel after dinner. I also discovered that lactose, something I'd tolerated fine when I was younger, was now starting to irritate my stomach. After removing most dairy, aside from lactose-free or fermented versions like Greek yogurt, my bloating all but vanished. Mood swings and irritability. Something I never expected was how much food could affect my mood. I used to get snappy in the late afternoon or feel emotionally drained by early evening. I assumed it was just exhaustion from the day. But as I began swapping out sugar and refined carbs for whole foods and steady energy sources, I noticed that I felt more even-tempered. No, more sharp crashes or mood swings. My emotional resilience improved. I was able to respond to stress more calmly, sleep better at night, and even feel more content throughout the day. Blood sugar spikes and dips can play a huge role in emotional well-being, especially for seniors. And I hadn't realized how much I was riding that roller coaster. My blood pressure and cholesterol numbers told the story. The final piece of the puzzle was my lab work. After changing my diet for a few months, I had a follow-up visit with my doctor. My blood pressure, which had been on the borderline of high for years, was down to a healthy range. My cholesterol levels, particularly my triglycerides, had improved significantly. It wasn't magic. It was just real food eaten with intention. Foods high in sodium, saturated fat, and refined sugar were putting constant pressure on my heart. Once I stopped consuming them regularly, my body could start to heal. The subtle signs I used to ignore. When I think back to how I used to feel before I made these changes, I remember things like needing a nap after every meal, brain fog that lingered for hours, random skin breakouts or rashes, trouble sleeping through the night, feeling heavy or unmotivated, tightness in my chest after rich foods, dry mouth, or bad breath, frequent. Heartburn, none of these seemed dramatic on their own, but together they were my body's way of pleading for change. And now that I've listened, I feel like I've been given a second chance at health and vitality, a new relationship with my body. The biggest lesson I've learned is that my body is always speaking to me. I just wasn't listening. What I thought were normal signs of aging were actually warning lights, and thankfully I caught them in time. Food is powerful. It can heal or it can harm. And the truth is, many of the foods I once trusted were quietly harming me. But once I removed them, the transformation was incredible. Now I check in with myself after meals. How do I feel? Do I have energy? Am I in pain? My body gives me the answers. I just have to be quiet enough to hear them. What I eat instead, my safe and tasty. Swaps. When I first started cutting out the foods that were making me feel sluggish, sore, and foggy, I was honestly worried. I thought to myself, what on earth am I going to eat now? After all, so many of my meals, my go-to breakfasts, my quick lunches, and even my comfort dinners included the very foods I was learning to avoid. White bread, processed meats, sugary snacks, diet drinks. They were all part of my routine. Removing them felt like giving up decades of habit and comfort. But here's what I discovered. I didn't need to starve. I didn't need to eat bland, boring meals. In fact, I started eating better, tastier, more nourishing food, and feeling more satisfied than I had in years. Let me take you through some of the most important food swaps I made. These changes didn't just improve my health, they also brought joy back to my plate. Breakfasts that actually fuel me, old habit. Sugary cereal with skim milk or white toast with butter. New favorite, overnight oats with berries and chia seeds. My mornings used to start with a quick bowl of cereal. I didn't realize how much sugar I was consuming first thing in the morning, or how quickly it was being digested, leaving me hungry by mid-morning. When I switched to overnight oats, everything changed. I mix rolled oats with unsweetened almond milk, chia seeds, and cinnamon, then top it with blueberries or a few banana slices. It's easy to prep the night before, and in the morning, it's ready to go. Sometimes I'll add a spoon of natural peanut butter for extra protein. This breakfast keeps me full and energized, and best of all, it doesn't spike my blood sugar. Bread that loves me back, old habit. White bread or store-bought sandwich rolls. New favorite, sprouted grain bread or sourdough bread was one of the hardest things to change. I love toast, sandwiches, and warm rolls with soup. But once I learned how refined white flour spikes blood sugar and causes inflammation, I knew I had to find a better option. Now I use sprouted grain bread, like Ezekiel bread, or naturally fermented sourdough from a local bakery. These options are easier to digest and packed with nutrients. Plus, they taste amazing when toasted with a little avocado or almond butter. Lunches that don't weigh me down. Old habit, ham or turkey sandwiches with chips. New favorite, grain. Bowl with roasted vegetables and a boiled egg. I used to eat the same kind of sandwich almost every day. It was easy, familiar, and quick. But those processed deli meats were packed with sodium and preservatives that were hurting my joints and my heart. Now I make a simple grain bowl. I cook a batch of quinoa or brown rice at the start of the week, then toss in roasted vegetables, like sweet potatoes, zucchini, and red peppers, a few greens, and a protein like a boiled egg or some grilled chicken, a little drizzle of olive oil and lemon juice, and I'm good to go. It's flavorful, colorful, and leaves me feeling light but full. Drinks that heal, not harm, old habit. Diet soda or sugary fruit juices. New favorite, herbal teas, infused water, or green smoothies. Giving up diet soda was tough. I was so used to that sweet fizz in the afternoon. But when I learned how artificial sweeteners could harm my gut and even affect brain function, I decided to stop. Now I keep a pitcher of cucumber and mint water in the fridge, or sometimes just lemon water. It's refreshing and feels fancy, even though it's simple. I've also started drinking herbal teas. Peppermint, chamomile, and ginger are my favorites. They soothe my digestion and keep me hydrated, and when I want something more filling, I make a green smoothie with spinach, banana, almond milk, and a scoop of plant-based protein powder. It's delicious and gives me a real energy lift. Dinners that are simple but nourishing. Old habit. Pasta with creamy sauces or takeout fried food. New favorite, baked salmon with sweet potato and steamed greens. I used to think cooking healthy. Dinners meant hours in the kitchen, but that's not true at all. One of my favorite easy meals now is baked salmon. I season it with herbs and lemon and bake it in the oven for 15-20 minutes. Alongside it, I'll have a roasted sweet potato, just sliced and tossed in olive oil, and a side of steamed spinach or broccoli. It's fast, satisfying, and packed with omega-3s, fiber, and antioxidants. Everything my older body needs to thrive. Snacks that support. My health old habit, cookies, crackers, or microwave popcorn. New favorite, apple slices with almond butter or a handful of walnuts. Snacking was always my weak spot. I'd reach for whatever was easy. But now, I've learned to keep smarter choices around. Snacks that nourish me instead of weigh me down. A few of my favorites. Apple slices with a tablespoon of almond butter carrot, sticks with hummus, a handful of walnuts or pumpkin seeds, a small piece of 85% dark chocolate, just one square. These keep me satisfied between meals without causing blood sugar crashes or inflammation. Desserts that don't damage. Old habit, ice cream or store-bought cake. New favorite, chia pudding or frozen. Banana ice cream, I've got a sweet tooth. I always have. But I've learned to satisfy it without hurting my body. Now, instead of ice cream, I make a simple chia pudding with unsweetened almond milk, vanilla extract, and a few chopped dates or berries. It's creamy, naturally sweet, and feels like a treat. Another favorite? I freeze banana slices and blend them in a food processor with a splash of almond milk. It turns into a creamy, ice cream-like dessert that's completely natural and surprisingly satisfying. Cooking oils and fats that work with my body old habit. Vegetable oil and margarine. New favorite, extra virgin olive oil and real butter. In moderation, I used to cook everything in vegetable oil. It's cheap and easy to find, but now I know it's high in omega-6 fats which can contribute to inflammation. I've replaced it with extra virgin olive oil, which is rich in healthy fats that protect the heart and brain. For baking or spreading. On toast, I use real butter, just a small amount. It's a whole food, unlike margarine, which is full of trans fats and additives. The joy of eating. Again, what surprised me most through all of this wasn't just how much better I felt. It was how much more I started enjoying food again. When I stopped relying on processed convenience foods and began nourishing my body with whole, colorful meals, I found joy in eating. My meals became something I looked forward to again, not just for the taste, but for how they made me feel after. No more food comas. No more regret after meals. No more discomfort or guilt. Just steady energy, peaceful digestion, and a sense of real satisfaction. My simple rule. Now, if it hurts, it's out. When I started changing my diet after turning 65, it felt like I was diving into a complicated maze of labels, ingredients, and nutrition advice. There were low-fat diets, high-protein plans, gluten-free, trends, and everything in between. I was overwhelmed and confused. I didn't want to turn my golden years into a science experiment. But after months of trial, error, and real results, I discovered a rule so simple, so effective, that it became my North Star. If it hurts me, it's out. That's it. One sentence that now guides nearly every food decision I make. No long list of forbidden foods, no guilt, no stress. Just a promise I made to myself. I won't keep putting things into my body that make me feel worse. Listening to my body. Instead of food marketing, let's face it, food companies are experts at marketing. They know how to sell something as healthy, even when it's full of sugar, chemicals, or empty calories. I used to fall for it all the time. Low-fat yogurt, sugar-free snacks, heart-healthy cereals. They sounded good, but they didn't feel good after I ate them. The turning point came when I stopped trusting the front of the box and started paying attention to how I actually felt. Was I bloated, achy, moody? Could I sleep well that night? Did my skin break out? I started treating every food as an experiment, and slowly I began to notice patterns. Foods that made me feel worse. Over time, it became painfully clear which foods just didn't agree with me anymore. Some of these used to be my favorites, but I had to face the truth. They hurt more than they helped. Here are a few that made it to my personal out list. Highly processed meats like bacon, sausage, and cold cuts always left me feeling inflamed and heavy. Refined white flour spiked my blood sugar, made me tired, and triggered joint pain. Excess sugar led to energy crashes, headaches, and mood swings. Artificial sweeteners messed with my digestion and left a weird aftertaste. Fried foods tasted great in the moment but brought heartburn and bloating soon after. Too much dairy, something I tolerated fine when I was younger now, caused gas and discomfort. Vegetable oils, like corn or soybean oil, subtly added to my inflammation without me realizing it. I didn't stop eating these foods because someone scared me into it. I stopped because my body told me loud and clear they were no longer serving me. Foods that made me feel better. On the flip side, I began noticing how certain foods lifted me. They gave me energy, helped me sleep, eased my digestion, and even boosted my mood. Some of my all-time favorites now: leafy greens like spinach, kale, and arugula. They bring lightness and vitality. Colorful vegetables, roasted carrots, bell peppers, and beets make every meal vibrant and healing. Berries, sweet, satisfying, and great for brain health. Nuts and seeds, rich in healthy fats and fiber. Wild-caught salmon and other oily fish noticeably reduced joint pain and helped with mental clarity. Sweet potatoes, a comforting, anti-inflammatory carb. Whole grains like oats and quinoa kept my blood sugar steady and my stomach happy. Olive oil, my go-to fat for cooking and drizzling. These foods became more than just items on a list. They became allies in how I lived. Each day, giving myself permission to say no. For most of my life, I didn't want to be picky or difficult. I ate what was served, what was cheap, or what was convenient, even if I knew it didn't sit right with me. But one day, it hit me. If I don't take care of my body now, who will? So I started giving myself permission to say no. No to the slice of cake at the party if I knew I'd feel sick afterward. No to the fast food drive-through when I was tired and hungry. No to the old habits that were no longer serving me. Saying no didn't make me difficult. It made me strong. It made me self-respecting. It reminded me that I was still in charge of how I felt. Tuning in. Before I eat. These days, before I eat something, I pause for just a moment. I ask myself, is this food going to energize me or drain me? Will I feel better or worse after this meal? Is this worth it today? Sometimes I choose the indulgence. I'm human. I love a good homemade dessert or a slice of sourdough toast with butter. But now I make those choices with awareness, not out of habit or pressure. And when a food consistently makes me feel unwell, I honor that. I let it go. No drama, no guilt. Just self-respect. Life is too short to feel miserable. One thing I've realized in this season of life is that feeling good is a daily choice. I may not have the same metabolism or energy I did in my 30s, but I do have something even better. Wisdom, and part of that wisdom is knowing that I don't need to suffer for a few bites of something that doesn't serve me. I've already felt the fog, the pain, the discomfort. I've lived through it. And now, I choose better. I choose to feel strong when I wake up. I choose to move without pain. I choose clarity of mind and calm in my body. I choose peace at the Dinner table, because life at 65 plus should be about enjoying every moment, not recovering from what we ate the night before. My rule is simple but powerful. If it hurts, it's out. That's the phrase I come back to, again and again. It applies not just to food, but to everything, from people to habits to thoughts that don't serve my well-being. At the end of the day, it's not about restriction or fear. It's about respect. Respect for my body, my years, my wisdom, and my desire to live the rest of my life with vibrancy and joy. What this rule has given me. Since adopting this mindset, here's what I've gained. Better sleep, reduced joint pain, clearer thinking, more. Stable moods, improved digestion, more energy, stronger immunity, a renewed sense of control, and perhaps most importantly, I feel like myself again. Not the tired, foggy, aching version I thought was just part of aging, but the real me, the one who wakes up ready to live, to laugh, and to enjoy life's simple pleasures.